dealing with the promotion of territorial cooperation outside the European continent, and there are very interesting examples in Africa and in Latin America. These integration processes are following more or less some of the best experiences in Europe. Cross-border cooperation has a very relevant role, particularly in the African Union process. In 2007, the African Union Border Program was established with the support of the German Agency for Cooperation, GSS, and from the headquarters in Addis Ababa of the African Union. They are developing a very good job, I should say. In this sense, we are receiving, during our conference this year, the visit of two colleagues from the African Union, from this Africa Peace and Security Program. They will address us briefly in order to explain a little bit what are they doing with their borders. So I will ask to take the floor my colleague, ALULA and Iyasu.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your invitation. On behalf of the Institute for Peace and Security Studies and the African Union, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to be part of this important conference. I'd like to particularly thank Mr. Martin Guillermo Ramirez, Secretary General, AEBR, for graciously extending the invitation. I hope this will mark the beginning of a long and prosperous relationship with you. As a research and education think tank based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, IPSS works to contribute to the intellectual capacity of the African Union and its member states in peace and security. Established in 2007 through a tripartite agreement between Addis Ababa University, the Royal Danish Embassy, and the University of Peace Africa Program, IPSS plays a central role as a non-partisan, non-political African-owned institution with a mandate from the African Union through an executive council decision and strong ties with regional economic communities to tackle the intellectual challenge of peace and security in Africa. Underlining the Institute's work that it's focused on promoting practical African-centered solutions for peace and security challenges, including border management, cooperation, peacekeeping, conflict resolution, management, and prevention. IPSS pursues these with the generous support of the federal government of Germany through GIZ, through the education and training, research and policy analysis, and facilitation of discussions platform for experts and policy making in the peace and security sector. The issue of border management and governance is critical to Africa's peace and security. African boundaries have, since the demise of colonialism, and perhaps have been a source of great concern to independent African states. Despite and perhaps because of inheriting colonially drawn boundaries, and over time, with homogeneous areas were split by state boundaries and over time have developed along divergent paths with different loyalties, languages, values, religions, and economies, there have been recurrent disputes and violent conflicts over border and boundaries. Scarcity of natural resources, or conversely the abundance of natural resources such as oil, has exacerbated conflicts in border areas. In recent years, criminal elements have used porous borders and weak enforcement institutions in parts of Africa. To smuggle weapons and drugs, exacerbating conflicts and undermining governments. There are two broad categories of border studies. The first, traditional model, is focused on strictly territorial and state sovereignty versus vis-a-vis border delimitation and demarcation, as this impacts the relations between sovereign states. For the better part of the 20th century, many African states prescribed this view of border studies. The statist view of borders is rigid and inherently inward-looking, defining relations based on friend or foe, and with limited policy options for cross-border cooperation. The second model of border studies is a more modern view motivated less by the state's territorial or sovereignty concerns than the interests of the borderlands themselves. This is to say that lands and local communities in close proximity to borders or international boundaries, whose lives are significantly impacted by their geographic locations. This view is more outward-looking and emphasizes cross-border cooperation. African policymakers in recent years have begun a gradual shift to this viewpoint. As a result, the door was opened for policy discussions by the African Union and its member states on how to transform borders from barriers to bridges for economic and social cooperation. On January 27, 2007, the heads of state and the African Union Commission formed the African Union Border Program to support member states in border management and governance. The AUBP is tasked with addressing the persistent lack of delimitation demarcation that gives rise to undefined zones within which the application of national sovereignty poses problems and constitute a real obstacle to the deepening of Africa's integration process. Further, the AUBP is tasked with consolidating the gains made in the regional integration process as demonstrated by the existence of the Regional Economic Communities, or RECs, as well as addressing cross-border criminal activities under cooperative security framework. In June of the same year, the mandate of the AUBP was adopted by the AU Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs, marking a major historical milestone in the evolution of the continental level of policy making on the all-important subject of border management, cooperation, and governance in Africa. As a result of this shift in policy and posture, policy discussions at the regional and continental level focus on systematically converting borders from their traditional postures of barriers into a more welcoming function as bridges, consistent with the common engagement to prevent conflicts and deepen the African integration process, already in place on the model of the European Union. Cross-border cooperation such as Nigeria, Sao Tome, and Principe Joint Development Zone, cross-border health centers between Mali and Burkina Faso, and security cooperation between ECOWAS member states are some recent examples of this policy shift. As a partner institute with the African Union, IPSS began working with the AUBP in 2011 in various consultative meetings to define, clarify, and put forth sound recommendations for border management and governance. Last year, IPSS began an annual border colloquium which brought together national border management institutions, regional stakeholders, policymakers, and experts to share ideas and best practices, as well as address challenges in border management and governance. This is particularly critical in light of the 2017 deadline for all African Union member states to limit and demarcate their borders. IPSS also commissioned an anthology of border policies in Africa chronicling the policy evolution of the last 50 years or so. This landmark publication focuses primarily on unpublished documents by various African as well as non-African intellectuals who shaped, albeit behind closed doors, the narratives of member states' border policies. We are convinced this publication will further deepen an understanding of the complexity of border management and governance and cooperation and serve as a reference point for refining policy discussions currently undergoing in various capitals in Africa. In partnership with the AUBP, PSS is also working to enhance border management institutions. We have outlined comprehensive capacity building projects designed to provide education and training in the conceptual and technical aspect of border management. The complexity of border management is a delicate balancing act of ensuring security while enhancing and expanding cross-border cooperation. The achievement of the member states of the European Union in finding this balance is a testament to the vision and hard work of European Union and member states. Africa looks to learn from your experience in achieving this balance of integration and security. Our visit here, therefore, is a call for cooperation and assistance from all you through sharing your experiences and supporting the various African border initiatives underway in an effort to find this balance. We share the same aspirations as you and face similar challenges. Our call for cooperation is premised on the fact that the world is increasingly shrinking through globalization, while the threat of terrorism, drug trafficking, and weapons smuggling respects no borders. I look forward to working with all of you in the coming month, and again, thank you for your invitation.